TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Reverse Gears moved to Thursdays at 8, 7 Central on the Travel Network channel, TNCRadio.live. You're invited to ride through the stories of and music that made the memory makers we call the soundtrack of life at our new time, 8, 7 Central, Thursdays on TNCRadio.live. It's Landline Now, followed by Steve Summers' Overnight Drive every night on TNCRadio.live starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central. You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live, where James Rogers, Jamie Irvine, and Tom Kelly provide owner-operators of commercial trucks with expert advice about starting, operating, and growing a professional trucking fleet. It's time to mind your trucking business.
Thank you, Rock, for that great introduction, and thank you for listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Irvin, and I'm with my two co-hosts, James Rogers. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So glad to have you with us today. I know you've been on the road, so taking a few minutes to chat today on the show. We always appreciate your perspective. And our other esteemed co-host, Tom Kelly. How are you today, Tom?
I'm doing great as well, and I'm also on the road this week.
We are truly remote.
Yeah, we are. I'm traveling
through. Where are you traveling?
Yeah, I'm throughout the southeast U.S. Houston, Baton Rouge, Montgomery, Charlotte, Chattanooga, Nashville. I'm covering it all here.
You're on the road, man. And I'm coming from the Great White North, as usual, from my studio up here in Alberta, Canada, just north of the Montana border, if you're not sure where that is. So today we've got an action-packed show to talk about a lot of things going on. I think we could put this today's show under the overarching theme of labor issues, but we're going to give you, first of all, an update on AB5. We've talked about it on the show before. Some things are happening that's giving us a little more insight. James, you mentioned that you saw a tweet coming from the individual who's responsible for tabling AB5. Could you give us an update on what you saw and then give us your thoughts on the implications, and then we'll talk about that?
Well, yeah, the Ms. Hernandez, the Democratic Senate lady from California that authored and tabled the AB5 law, and then followed it up with Assembly Bill 2257, I think is the exact number. She posted on Twitter today that businesses can continue to contract under, continue to subcontract under the business-to-business exemption for AB5, and that also is specifically detailed in that Assembly Bill 2257. That's huge. I mean, because basically, kind of like what initial thoughts that I had were, if you are a true business and your contractor in this industry, in this specifically, is also structured as a business, like a LLC at a minimum, preferably an S corporation, you can absolutely continue to subcontract with that parent company, but you have to, still meet these steps. And there's like a total of 28 steps. Obviously the AB5 will be cleared because you're working with two businesses. So once that's completed, then you have to follow the other exemptions, which we'll get more into that. But that to me, that is good news. Now it's just, what is this law really going to expose?
James, you can hear the enthusiasm and the hopefulness in your voice, but Tom, you say not quite yet.
Yeah,
give us your perspective.
I wish it was that simple or that good, but I guess I'm a little bit older than you are, James, and I guess I'm a crotchety old man who just doesn't trust any politician.
No, I don't blame you.
There's a catch here, and the truth of it is, look, they're taking away some freedoms that some drive. Now, I submit without argument that some companies have taken advantage of the relationship between subcontractor and the company. I submit that is true. But I also would say that the other side needs to submit that there's a whole lot of owner-operators out there who enjoy very much doing what they want to do when they want to do it, and this is going to crimp their style in a big way.
Well, and what I see is, even if everything that James is so excited about comes to pass, and this, as long as the quote unquote subcontractor has their business set up with the right structure, what we are talking about is we're talking about a more complicated structure. We're talking about more expense for accounting fees, lawyer fees, business related fees. So this, no matter what, even if the individual driver can continue to operate as an owner operator and be a subcontractor, the burden on them will go up. James, is that how you see it? Do you agree with me on that, or do you disagree?
No, I absolutely agree with that. And that's we were kind of talking about it off air, is that that's what I'm realizing about this law, and a lot of arguments that I'm hearing now is that, like what Tom was saying, he's telling the truth. I don't disagree with him. But now that this has kind of come out and more research has come with it, with the steps that are involved, you're correct. It's too in saying that it's not going to be easy. Like I said, it's like 28 steps. You get through the AB5, and then you have to meet all 12 of the exemptions under the business to business, according to the repeal bill, which was Assembly Bill 2257, when they realized they messed up with the original writing of AB5. And then if you meet those steps, then you're automatically sent under the business to business exemption to qualify under the Borello test, which is the old standard, which is, there's no one that meets it. You got 13 steps, and whichever one outweighs the other is where you're classified at. And that's the beautiful thing that I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is that at the end of the day, it's still a tax grab. It's still a money grab. They want their tax money, whether you're a business or not. This law, I've said it since day one, is a killer for anybody that wants to stay a sole proprietor. It kills you as a sole proprietor. You can no longer, at least in the state of California currently, stay a sole proprietor if you want to continue to subcontract according to those laws and these steps.
Well, what's even more is, if I'm a sole proprietor in Texas and I want to deliver goods in California, I've got an issue even there.
Yes, currently, absolutely. Yep.
So I'm in trouble no matter what.
Well, and that's why I say it's a sole proprietor killer. It really is. You're not lying. That's the thing, is that it's forcing shady business practices to become legit in order to collect tax money. Well,
again, I think when people say that, to me, that's the drinking the Kool-Aid part. Yeah, well, there is some of that will be helped, but you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater there, because there's a whole lot of very legit people who are going to get hurt in this.
And I agree with you.
Trying to find, are there shady? And this doesn't stop shady business practices. It'll just change colors.
Correct. And I agree with you. That's the beautiful thing about what we're seeing with this law right now, is that everything you're saying is absolutely correct. It's at the end of the day, it's all about, they want their hand in your pocket for the tax money. My contention is that there is a path forward, and it's not easy. And I think that that's the biggest thing outside of, your standpoint, is that I feel that what it is people just are too hard-headed to want to make the change, and they don't want to take on the extra expense to take that next step in order to protect their business.
Tom, let me, since you already talked about your age, let me ask you something, because this is a little bit before my time. In my mind, in the past, wasn't it always the Republicans that were like accused of being big business, and the Democrats were always like for the people? Mm-hmm. And hasn't that dramatically changed in 40 years, where we've seen a complete reversal of that stance, just from a political point of view?
No, I think that you're still going to find most Republicans that are going to be more in support of business and looking for smaller government. And
that's what I'm saying, though. In the past, wasn't Republicans accused of being big government, and Democrats were like always for the people. I thought that was what their stance was 40, 50
the
years.
Democrats have always looked for, going back to FDR days, that government solves problems. Big government solves for problems, and Republicans have always pushed for no smaller government, localized government. That's where the laws should exist. And and this, and we're not going to go there, but this gets back to what the Supreme Court was saying about Roe v. Wade, that these are decisions that should be local decisions, not federal decisions. Now, we can argue about, okay, well, wait a minute, what rights do we have from the federal government? And that's a great conversation to have, but not for today. But even as we're sitting here talking about all of this, right this very moment, as we record this in mid-July of 2022, there is quite a demonstration going on at the Los Angeles port, the Port of Los Angeles, of several hundred truck drivers who are fighting back against this. And I don't want to lose what you're saying, James. I agree that you can jump through all the hoops that are necessary to jump through on all of this, but I still wonder whether or not you're losing independence to work when you want to. Of all of that.
I would contend that no, you're not. What it's actually forcing is it's forcing these larger carriers, or carriers who, want to control how their subcontractors work. It's forcing them to take the reins off. I mean, I know for my fleet, all my contractors, that legitimately, I don't, there's nothing. It's completely hands off. They're free to operate as they see fit, work with who they want to work with. Me as the carrier or the parent company, even as it's defined in the Assembly Bill 2577, I'm nothing more than a support role. So I mean, legitimately, that's exactly how my business is structured. And the reason I structured it that way is because in my process of learning and stuff, I look back at a lot of these cases that did have misclassification problems, and that was the biggest thing, was the word control. A good example is one of the hot topics that was brought up in the Dynamax problem in California. When that lawsuit came through and they had the Dynamax, before Borrello, was the fact that they told them where to go, basically dispatched their drivers. They forced them to wear shirts. They forced them to wear hats. Had to have the company logo on their equipment. That you can't do that. And the thing is that the laws, what's written in the laws, most of the states across this country already have those laws in effect. They're just not, they don't enforce them. So now they're enforcing it, and everybody's going crazy.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNC Radio Live. We've been having a spirited discussion about the updates on the AB5 law. And when we get back from our break, we're going to talk about some of the labor pushback that's happening right now in California and the implications for you as you try to go from being a truck driver to owning a professional fleet. We'll be right back.
You're listening to TNCRadio.live. Remember to tune in to the Truckers Network radio show with Shelley Johnson weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Hope Savara here. Tune in every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on TNCRadio.live for my new show, The Driver Life Podcast. From your feet to the food you eat, from cellular health to how your cell phone affects your health, from how you move to improving your sleep. I believe it's the small, simple changes that lead to the big results in your life so that you can feel good again. We cover it all here on the Driver Life Podcast. Just every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on tncradio.live.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Irvin, and we're with James Rogers. Hey, James.
Yes, sir.
And Tom Kelly.
You betcha.
Everybody's remote today, traveling around this great continent of ours. We are having a spirited conversation, providing you with some updates on AB5. We're going to get into a little later on some of the reactions from the trucking industry, especially where we have a developing story with the strikes and the protests in Los Angeles. But before we get to that, James, you were saying that as a business owner who has several people contracting with you and several trucks, you've got your business structured in such a way where your legal representation has said to you that if you went to California, you'd be okay. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Give us some insight into how you have your business structured and why you would be okay in California.
Yeah. Well, going through this process, obviously, I have contractors working with contracted businesses. I did just because I'm inquisitive. I reached out to several attorneys in California, as well as my own attorney, and I sent them copies of my contracts and all that stuff. We had, discussions, and every one of them came back and said, yes, in accordance with this law, you are 100% compliant. And the words that they used were, one attorney told me, said, you would be the perfect company to end up in a lawsuit out here because you would completely destroy it. You would destroy that. And the reason,
and that's the problem. That's my rub, is that's exactly what's going to end up happening. Is a company like yours that's legit is going to end up going out of business, defending themselves from a frivolous lawsuit from the government, as you have to prove that you are innocent and that you're doing it right. And
correct.
So we're going to lose companies who are trying to do it right.
Yep. And unfortunately, once again, you're telling the truth. That's not a fallacy. At the end of the day, there will be a lawsuit. And
Many.
that one attorney actually said that, like, in a situation kind of like how I have my company structured, which, like I said, is that when I hire a contracted company, at a minimum, they have to be established as an LLC prior to signing the contract. That's actually one of the requirements to the business-to-business exemption. I didn't know this. It's just a practice that I'd started, 5 years ago when I started my company. Was I wanted that established that way. One, because that's the way that the state of Missouri identifies contractors versus employees. So when I established that, like I said, I look back at a lot of these, cases. Dynamex, being California versus Dynamex being a big one. California versus Borrello being probably the second largest one that the Supreme Court heard in the misclassification. And there were always key aspects, and each test was refined. And it did. I made dang sure that if I brought a subcontracted company or a contracted company on, there was going to be no control. My carrier is nothing more than a complete support aspect. And that's a reason why you saw a lot of mega carriers. That's why they took off, because they don't want to release that control.
Then why should I do anything with you? What's the benefit from? Okay, so I own TNC Trucking.
Yep.
And I've got my own authority. I've got my own company, and it's a LLC/S Corp, and is set up in Texas. And it's myself and my wife, and we're each CDL licensed drivers. We do team driving across the U.S. Okay. That's the scenario. Why would I want to do business with you? What are you bringing to me that I would want to do business with you?
I bring a back office support system that you pay for that you may not want to do yourself.
Okay.
And I also bring an experienced company who's already established with experience and establishment that you may not have yet.
Okay.
So it all comes down to administration and stuff like that. You could still work with whoever you want to work with. Absolutely, you can do it.
Okay,
James, it's more than just administration. Like client acquisition in any business is a costly affair.
Yep.
And if I am looking to fill, like let's say I'm getting my, you know, I'm in Tom's position where my wife and I are working, and right now we've got 15 out of 20 days booked, and we need 5 more days. How much does it cost me? How much time and effort do I have to put in to fill up those other days? I can just call James and be like, James, I got 5 days. You got anything for me? Yeah, no problem. Go here. And it's that there is something there to make that appealing, and that cost of acquisition of that work is less because I've got that existing relationship. So I do see a point that James has, that he is offering something of value. Tom, what do you say to that?
Okay, no, I'm good with that, and so that's why I'm working with him. But I'm looking for help on which loads to pick up. Are you going to help me?
I can. It's actually written into the contract, which is very clear in the business to business, is that if there is a services provided by the parent company, that there is compensation for it. Now, obviously, that can be covered in the 80/20 or anything like that. So yes, if you contact me, right, because it actually states it in this relationship, that it has to be under contract and practiced in fact. So like for me, I'll just give you the blurb that's in my contract, that my carrier does not provide them loads. Yet, if they need assistance, yes, Spartan Direct will, search loads and present them, but they are under no obligation at no point in time to take it until they negotiate the rate and they accept it. I can present it to them, but it's completely their decision-making process if they want it.
So I hear that there are a lot of people who looks like they're going to be out of business in California because they want to jump through hoops. So I want to go to California and pick up what should be a bunch of easy loads now because...
And that is why the rates in California are actually on the climb.
Are actually what?
They are actually climbing. The rates in California are climbing quite well.
Yeah, because there's more loads than drivers at this point, or at least there should be soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, that's bad for the everyday person, because one of the things about economics that people don't seem to understand is that when there is more supply than when there is more demand than supply in the trucking industry, it drives the cost up of everything for everyday Americans, everyday Canadians. And that's something that this, like the driver shortage and making it more difficult to fill those driving positions, is going to hurt everyday people, in addition to being damaging to the trucking industry.
Well, you're stealing my thunder, but yes, that's the path I was trying to take us down. It's exactly that. Okay, so I come up with a solution. We think it works. We're going to go to California. We do these pickups. There's nothing that stops the state of California, though, from coming back and saying, we're going to sue Spartan Direct because we think that when Tom came and picked up his load, he was directed to do so. So now you got to prove that that's not the way it went.
Well, that's not true. And that's what one of the attorneys told me, because I did ask that very question. I said, so is it up to me if one of my contracted companies goes and picks a load up, if they decide to fine us or anything? They said, no. The way that the law is written, it is up to them to prove that you have misclassified. Absolutely.
But how would they do that other than getting a subpoena and getting our records?
They would have to tear your contract apart. That's the whole premise of where the business-to-business relationship starts under that Assembly Bill 2577. You have got to have a rock-solid contract between the two businesses. It can no longer be between James Rogers and Tom Kelly. It's got to be between Spartan Direct and TNC Trucking. You cannot identify the individual at all. It has to be clear as day that it is a complete business-to-business relationship. And that's the way my contracts are. Nowhere does it address an individual. Nowhere does it address anything other than, the individual as the owner of this company.
But the truth of it is, though, what I think we're going to see California doing is they've already said they're going to be picking apart this stuff and looking for that it was, that I'm the only person in my company, you're the only person in your company, and the truth of it was that it's just arose by any other name, and that it was Tom doing something for James.
Right, but that's where you have got. I have to relieve control of you, like of TNC Trucking. I don't tell you what loads to book. I don't tell you what brokers to work with. I don't tell you what routing to take. I don't tell you what your rate is. I don't do none of that.
Okay, but if you're in court, okay, and you have to answer questions honestly, I find out, okay, through you, I found out about this load in California. It needs to be picked up on Tuesday, dropped off on Friday.
Yep.
All right. Yep. And I don't show up till Thursday, and I don't deliver till Sunday. And the customer's mad, and everybody's mad about everything, and so there's this frustration that's out there. Do you want to work with me again the next week?
Nothing says that I have to, and that's the beauty of the contract.
But you see where this ends up going is you end up working with the people who you can trust, who keep their commitments, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's just like any other business to business relationship. That it basically once again, I keep going back to the contract.
It's also like any other employee-employer relationship.
No, it's not, because under a business to business relationship, I cannot fire you. I can terminate a contract based on performance, but I cannot fire you. And it actually says it in one of the criteria for the business to business exemption is that there has to be a contract that presents the potential for a breach of contract for either party.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNC Radio Live, and we are having a spirited conversation. When we get back from our break, we're going to talk about some of the pushback from the trucking industry, both in California and potentially elsewhere. We will be right back.
It's Landline Now, followed by Steve Summers' Overnight Drive every night on TNCRadio.live starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central.
Front Lane introduces Impulse, the world's first collision alert system for the driver behind you when you have to brake hard. Impulse uses ultra-bright pulsing red LEDs to alert drivers behind you who might not be giving their full attention to the road. Using amazing accelerometer technology and a battery that will last for years, Impulse installs in minutes, fits nearly any vehicle, and never requires additional wiring. Drivers react 50% faster, helping to protect you and your passengers. Learn more by visiting www.frontlane.com/impulse. That's www.frontlane.com/impulse. Approved by all 50 states. Impulse by Front Lane.
I'm Hope Savara. Join us on TNCRadio.live at 7 p.m. Eastern with Building Strong Minds with your host, Dr. Christopher Cortman.
Catch Landline Now every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, along with an encore presentation weekdays at noon, right here on TNCRadio.live.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
Thanks, Ron. I'm your host, Jamie Irvin, co-host, and I'm with Tom Kelly. Tom, welcome back after the break.
Thank you.
James?
I'm still here.
You ready to go another round, brother?
Let's go. Let's get
All
it
right.
in.
All right. Sounds good. So, one of the things on Mind Your Trucking Business that we're always trying to get to is, first of all, keep you up to date with what's happening in the industry and try to give you a perspective on it, on how it might impact the way that you run your professional fleet. James, we hear you. Tom and I have been listening very intently at some of the things that you've been talking about in relation to kind of an update on AB5. But let's face it, the California Trucking Association, they fought AB5. Now we're seeing protests. We had one in Oakland yesterday. Now at the port of LA, there's another one today. Why are the people at the ports protesting this? James, you got a thought on that?
Well, my thought is that a lot of the guys at the ports were once again, they were sole proprietors. They own their own trucks. They've been working for the port authority or carriers that work out of the ports, and they either don't have the means or they just don't see the way forward or don't want to put the effort in and just don't want to change. I mean, that's one thing about the trucking industry, especially owner operators, is that a lot of us don't like change. And I still hold the contention. It sucks. This is a bad situation. I don't agree with it. I'm just trying to find the way forward. And that's where I kind of look at it. But they're protesting for the right thing. And unfortunately, the ports have a way to fight back right now. Apparently, there's a law or there's been some sort of contractual agreement in the state of California that if these guys' freight sits for longer than, I want to say like 7 to 9 days, they actually charge them. They fine them like an initial like $100 or $200, and then every day after that it compounds. So now these guys are going to incur an additional amount of money that they're going to lose on top of just not working. It's what do you do? What do you do?
Tom, what's your thoughts on the pushback from the workers at the ports?
Well, not everybody has the business background, the access to lawyers, and quite frankly, the smarts that James has. And this isn't going to be easy for anybody. So I understand their frustration. That they're okay. Yeah, maybe there are a bunch of hoops that they can jump through, and it end up being pretty similar to what they did before. But it's not one of those things. I mean, who's going to make the money out of this in the end? It's the lawyers.
Yeah.
And you have to decide: am I willing to spend the time, energy, and resources with a lawyer to get this all right? Now, understanding that every dime you spend with a lawyer goes off your bottom line. And so, if you end up spending a couple of $1,000, how do you make that up? Well, you can either increase your rates, okay, which again, who ends up paying for that?
The consumer.
The consumer. Just to me, the only negative I have really, James, as I listen to your talking, is I feel like in a way you're letting them off the hook.
No. And see, I think that's
you're giving them the you're saying, yes, you're right, there is a way to work through this. And I'm not disagreeing, okay, you're right there. But it's going to cost money. It's going to cost energy. It's going to cost time, and it is painful at the very least. And so how do you fix it? Again, I think the only fix that's going to happen to any of this, guys, is we're going to see nature take its course over the course of the next weeks, months, and we're going to see a lot of guys who are going to say, ain't worth it to me no more. I'm not driving in California. And some of them are going to say, I'm not driving at all. I'm done.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, believe me, even on my own separate, podcast, I had that's the biggest thing that a lot of people have said is that the perception that I'm giving, just because I do, I love research naturally. And I appreciate the compliment. But at the end of the day, I'm not letting them off the hook. I know what's going to need to happen. Which is, you're correct. It's going to require, if not one, multiple lawsuits to create a landmark decision with the Supreme Court. That's where it's going to have to end up.
So I have a
just
question,
trying-
James.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't think it ends in the Supreme Court. I think it ends with the American consumer demanding a change and them having to pull back on this at least for some period of time, because this economy can't take it right now. They just can't.
No, well,
we can't take this.
Well, and you just led me into another thought. Is you're absolute. Once again, this law is creating a lot of truths. Is that the inflation report came out yesterday, and you're right. It's going to take the consumer to pull back off of another 9.1% surge that's being created or assisted by this law amongst the other supply chain constraints. And you're right, that is what it's going to take. But at the end of the day, I think to get the final result, because it goes back to a tax grab by the California government, it's going to end up with the Ninth Circuit or in the Supreme Court at the end of the day.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here. So do you guys really think the state of California is going to go after a company the size of Spartan that has 8 drivers, or are they going after the big carriers and they're going to focus their attention on people, or not people, but large corporations that are taking advantage of drivers? Like, isn't there some truth to that, or do you actually see the state of California suing a small little operation with 4 to 8 trucks?
By going after the big guy, you're getting the little guy.
Yes.
Okay. By going after Schneider, they're out of there.
Yeah.
Right. So what you're saying is that when they go after the large one, they're going to go down the list of all the people.
No. What I'm saying is when they run Swift out of there, all the guys who were counting on doing a bunch of deals with Swift this year, let's say I'm a driver out there, I'm going to, my plan is I'm going to do 20 jobs with Swift and another 20 with Schneider and another 20 with Yellow. Okay. Now they're all run out. They're all gone. Now you got, who am I going to work with?
And he's right. He's absolutely correct in that. They would not directly come in at a fleet my size. They just wouldn't. And I think that's that statement right there, coupled with the fact that those larger companies already have fled California. Prime left, Landstar left. I think Swift is operating in there, but they're only operating company drivers. That's what Prime's doing. Matter of fact, Landstar has a case already that's sitting to be tabled by the Supreme Court. They decided not to hear it. They just didn't kick it. They didn't kick it back down, but they tabled it. So it's still there. And it comes back to the control part of it. These bigger companies do not want to control it. And the legitimacy behind it is under that law, under the exemptions and stuff, they have their guys misclassified, which is why they completely pulled out every truck driver or every driver that is listed as a lease contractor or an independent contractor, because they do not have control. They have to book from a closed load board, they're forced dispatched, so on and so on. I could go down the list of these larger companies, but at the end of the day, Tom's absolutely correct. If they set a precedence with these larger companies, it will roll downhill to the small ones.
Yeah. So, if they go directly in, and honestly, I think they do go after somebody, at that size, just to set the precedent.
Yep.
It may not be James, but you only got to get a couple of them. If the old riddle: if you shoot a bird on a wire, there are 5 birds on a wire. You shoot one. How many are left? None, because the rest fly away.
Yep.
And I think that's what's going to happen with this too. You only have to go after a couple of guys that are the size of Spartan Direct, and the rest go away.
Okay, so the questions that come to mind are: what does the average truck driver who has a goal of moving to a professional fleet and owning a few trucks and maybe having some contractors work for them, what are they to do? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to continue to dive into the implications here for the state of California and by extension, of course, then the entire country when we get back from our break. We'll be right back.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is boosting the image of the industry by telling the story of trucking, and your story can be part of it. Upload a photo, tell us what you love about trucking, or send us a story about a good deed or charitable act in trucking. Be sure to follow us on social media and contact us through truckingmovesamerica.com. That's truckingmovesamerica.com.
I'm Hope Savara, your host of the Driver Life Podcast, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on tncradio.live.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry, our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of, and join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
Thanks, Ron. I'm Jamie Irvin, and I'm with Tom Kelly. Tom, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
James, glad to have you back. James Rogers.
Oh, thank you. I'm taking my flak vest off for this last second, so we're good.
Oh man, well things are heating up, so you gotta get ready here. We've been having this conversation about the long-term implications of the AB5 law in California. We had the California Trucking Association challenge it, and they failed to do so with the Supreme Court. Of course, this now has triggered the enactment of that law. We've had the person who tabled the law from Congress talk about a path forward. Tom's got some issues with that. James, you see a bit of hope. And then we've got actual protests from the trucking industry yesterday in Oakland, which would have been July the 13th. We're recording this on July 14th. July 14th, we're seeing protests at the Port of LA. So if you're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business, ideally you're a person in the trucking industry who has the goal of setting up a professional fleet, very similar to what James has done. Tom, what advice do you have for someone who has that goal and is thinking that way? How do they cope with all of this? How does what's happening in California perhaps affect their strategy?
You have to take a page out of James' book and understand you cannot wait. Now, the truth is, for whatever...
You cannot wait for what?
That's where I'm going. The injunction has not been lifted yet. It's going to be lifted any moment, any day. We don't know which day, but it's going to... And when that happens, if you have not already started doing your research and understanding what this means to your small business, it's too late. You've got to right now, today, start putting away whatever else you're working on, and take this up as you've got to figure out how you're going to talk to the other people in California, talk to your lawyer. Hopefully you've got a friend who's a lawyer, but you're going to take advantage of every resource you can find to figure out what this means to you. And just because James has worked through all the 20 something steps, and by the way, check out James on YouTube under James. Tell us again how to get to your stuff.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, the quickest way to find me is you just type in the Post Trip, or you can type in my name, James Rogers, and it'll bring it up. It's actually titled up under the Road Rage Podcast. And we did. I had it took literally, I think, 2 to 3 hours to process through every step. And we go through it in detail with the actual contractor from California and got him qualified 100%.
So you need to go spend the 2 or 3 hours looking at that. You can't just assume that somehow this is going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. It's already done. Okay. And any moment they're going to make it official. So now is the time to work to get ready for it.
Absolutely. I mean,
So
I'll just caveat. Go ahead.
What's the first
caveat
step?
for what the first step is? One, you got to establish your own contract for yourself. The easiest way to avoid the whole AB5 predicament is, one, to separate yourself from your business. And the easiest way to do that is structure your company as an S corporation. That'll start that. And then if you are going to follow the contractor model, you need to stand firm in that you are not going to work with nobody else other than businesses. You can no longer work with individuals. And that takes the first step of, one, you need to research, if you're in California, research California's labor laws and what their tests are to establish employee versus contractor. If you're based like me, I'm in Missouri. I spend days and nights, researching those laws. And you really do. It's going to require the company owner or small fleet owner in this industry to become more, more intelligent about this. It's no longer about just jumping in a truck and going and you hire your buddy or something. You have got to become more and more knowledgeable about this. You got to put in the work, and it's a process, a complete process. And then at the end of it, though, at the base of it is your contract. I've seen some guys that have offered a contract that's like one page. Hey, this is what we're going to agree to, a 80-20 split, sign the paper here. No, my contract has gone from like 15 pages when I started it 15 years ago to now where it's like 59, and it lays everything out to where, one, the contract is balanced. I can get sued according to the contract by breach of contract, and I can also hold the contracting company, accountable. That is kind of where it has to go at this point, and it's not an overnight thing. I mean, literally, ever since I started this 5 years ago, I've been doing it and didn't realize it. But when AB5 first came on the table, I really dove into it, and it's been like 3 years worth of work to get to this point to say, okay, you can do this, but it's going to take a lot of effort and time.
So, James, let me ask you something. Have you lost business because people viewed your contract at 59 pages as being prohibitive?
No, the people who have come here actually appreciate it because it protects them as well.
So it's actually improved your business.
Yes, sir.
So if you've got the goal of establishing a professional fleet, you needed to do this anyway. And sometimes we do need motivation. But to Tom's point, every time the government reaches and makes things more complicated, adds red tape, adds bureaucracy, it's harmful. It's harmful to the individuals involved. It's harmful to the business community. It's harmful to society in general, in my opinion, because unless the government is stepping in to stop some sort of like egregious sin against its citizens, the best thing for us in this free market is to let businesses go out there and perform and do what they do. That has always worked. Tom, that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, business sorts itself out.
Yes. 100% agree with that. I mean, believe me, I'm not letting them off the hook. I'm just trying to find that silver lining that if people want to put the work in. At the end of the day, I do. I appreciate, and I'm thankful that they are standing up and they're putting their feet in the ground and saying, no, this isn't right. And they're right. It's not right.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%, James. Part of this play brought to you by part of what we're doing here is we're taking the extremes to make sure that people understand that this is a big deal, okay? And they have to jump in and figure out what they're going to do about it. And you've provided a valuable service, and I compliment you on the work that you've done. Excuse me. And, we have to get people to understand that they have to take action, because if they don't, if you sit by and say, well, I'm going to let somebody else figure this out, you're going to end up in trouble in the long run. So you got to figure out, what am I going to do about this? And, one of the options is quit. That is an option. James has a different option. Okay. And his option is, here are some steps that you can go through be legit and to keep yourself from getting in trouble in the state of California. It's gonna be a rough few weeks, I think, Jamie. I think we're going to go through some tough times here as a part of all of this, and the implications that it will have in other states like Massachusetts.
Well, that's the problem, right? Is the trickle down effect, and as it spreads across the country, it creates widespread issues for the trucking industry because we're also interconnected. So that's definitely an issue. Tom, how can people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk to you specifically more about this subject or any of the subjects we talk about on Mind Your Trucking Business?
Well, one of the fastest things to do is just send an email to info@tncradio.live. We also have contact information on our website, tncradio.live. So there's a lot of different ways to reach out to us, and send your questions there. I'll make sure that Jamie and James get a chance to see them, and however you guys want to reach out to us, we're happy to discuss this in as great of detail as you'd like.
Right. And you can look at James Rogers' podcast by going to YouTube. The Road Rage podcast is what you want to search. And if you want to check out what I'm up to, head over to heavydutypartsreport.com. We're always talking about how to lower cost per mile and total cost of operation for anyone operating a commercial truck or trailer. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation today. We're looking forward to coming back next week, where we're going to continue the conversation about how to build a professional fleet and talk about the things you need to know that are going on in the industry right now to help you accomplish that goal. Thanks from all of us. We'll talk to you soon.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.